Now, so remember, yeah, this meeting is recorded, so everything you say will be saved for posterity in this meeting. So welcome everyone to the February 9th edition of the monthly OpenLineage meeting. This is where you'll find their notes and the recording. If you miss it or someone tells you, I wish I'd been there to hear the conversation. We start this by a round of introductions. Those are the voting members of the meetings, but of course, everyone is welcome to participate and contribute to this meeting. And so we were just talking about that. I'll go by the order on my screen. And, if you can just quickly state your name, why you're here, why you're interested, if there's a topic you wanted to talk about. And if you just want to be there to listen in and say nothing, this is welcome too. So don't feel the pressure to have to say something. So I'll start with, on top left of my screen is Michael Robinson.
Hi, everybody. Michael Robinson. I'm on the community team at Astronomer, and I coordinate these meetings. And I'm here today to talk about namespaces as well. So that's me. Thanks.
Next is me. So I'm Julien. I'm the lead for the OpenLineage project, chief architect of Astronomer. And today I'm going to talk about the proposal I sent to the Apache Airflow mailing list to contribute the OpenLineage Airflow integration as an Airflow providers and to make it built in Airflow. Next on my screen is Ross.
Hey, I'm Ross. I'm also on the community team here at Astronomer, and I'm here to help as usual. I do work on the docs and the website and things like that. And lately I've been spending my evenings printing these awesome OpenLineage ingots just for fun. And yeah, let me know if you want one.
Love it. Next is Enrico.
Hi, everyone. I'm Enrico. I'm from the Bacalhau project, which is a decentralized compute platform. It's just a up and coming project. I'm working on building an integration with Apache Airflow and OpenLineage. But I'm here to learn more about OpenLineage in general, and hopefully ask questions about integrations. So probably you'll see me in Slack at some point.
Great. Welcome, Enrico. Feel free to put the link to your project in the chat, so if people are curious. Next is Prachi.
Hi, I'm Prachi. I am part of the observability team here at Astronomer, and I'm also contributing to Marquez and hopefully soon to OpenLineage as well. Great to be here.
Great. Benji.
Hey everyone, I'm Benji, also on the Astronomer team, and mostly just here to listen today.
Brad?
Hey, Brad here from Fivetran, mostly here just to listen as well.
Welcome. Michael Collado.
Hey there, Mike Collado. I'm a staff software engineer at Astronomer on observability, contributor to OpenLineage. Just here to listen and chat.
Eric.
Hello, everyone. My name's Eric. I'm calling in from Allen in beautiful Providence, Rhode Island. I'm very glad to be here. This is my first OpenLineage monthly meeting, so thank you for being welcoming and having me. My interest is really focused on the benefits that I think OpenLineage is going to deliver, and I think it's really all about the joy of the data team, and I think OpenLineage can deliver elevated level on a day-to-day basis and elevate the collaboration of the different personas on the data team. So thank you for pushing this forward, and we're here to try to help out the community however we can. Thanks again.
Thank you. And you're neighbors with Michael Robinson. You guys should chat. Hi, Willie.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Willie. I'm the project lead and co-creator of Marquez. Also a OpenLineage committer and work on the observability product at Astronomer. And Julien, I'm excited to hear your AIP as you go over it. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello everybody. Minku Park here, and I'm a software engineer at Astronomer, and I'm also a contributor of OpenLineage and Marquez, and I'm always happy to see you all here.
Maciek?
Hey, I'm OpenLineage committer and software engineer at Getting Data. And yeah, today I want to listen to the discussion and discuss myself.
Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Cabral. I'm a product manager at Calibra for Lineage, and I'm here to listen and contribute as much as I can.
Peter.
Hey, I'm Peter. I'm a software engineer at Astronomer on the data observability team, and just listening in today.
John. Then let's go to Ben.
I couldn't find my unmute button. I'm here.
No problem.
I'm John. I work with Ross and Michael on the community team Astronomer. Here to hang around and help out how I can.
Ben.
Hi, Ben Sam. I'm just reading about the project. So I was meeting, figured I'd join and listen in and learn more about the project.
Howard.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Howard Yu. I work for Astronomer. And here's my dog, Cookie. But it's always good to be here in monthly meetings with the OpenLineage guys. It's one of my best meetings. So I'm very much anticipating what news you guys have and would like to hear more.
Robert.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robert. I'm a data engineer at Adherent, and just listening in today. Curious to hear about the IP. That's it.
And last but not least, let me check. Actually, yeah, Nikhil.
Hey all, I'm an engineer with Fivetran. Just here to listen in. It's my first meeting here.
Welcome. So this is it. So the next slide is, so welcome everyone. Just a quick reminder about communication beside those meetings. So most of the discussion happens on Slack. You can join the Slack here. There's also a mailing list that's mostly for announcements. The wiki will have the notes and the recording of the meeting. We also post announcements about new releases and new blog posts on Twitter, LinkedIn, and the YouTube channels as well as the recording. We also now on Mastodon. So the agenda today, we first have the announcements, which is kind of what's new in the project. And then Michael will go over the recent release we had. Then I'll follow with the OpenLineage in Airflow proposal. The AIP is the Airflow improvement process. That's how you submit proposal for improvement to the Apache Airflow project. Then we'll follow up on the discussion that Sherry has been driving about the real-world implementation of the spec, and especially use cases beyond just instrumenting runs. And last, we'll finish with the namespace discussion that Michael has published a blog post to talk about the namespaces in OpenLineage and so on. And we always have a section for open discussion if anybody wants to bring up something. So first, announcements. So we have an upcoming Lineage meetup that will be happening soon. So on March 9th at 6 p.m. in Providence, Rhode Island. So I think, you know, not looking at you, Eric, but I think there's like a match made in heaven. Michael is organizing this, and I think he's been talking to some of you on that call to help organize and agree on something. And we also welcome 2 new committers to OpenLineage with Minkyu, congratulations, and Benji. And I think there probably one more coming, but we need to, like, this will be for next meeting. I think that missed the call for just a little bit. So we'll announce at the next meeting. Congrats to new committer. Thank you for all your contributions. And we are very happy to have you here and keeping on going. So more details will be shared about this meetup on Slack, and feel free to reach out there and ping Michael Robinson directly if you have questions. So now I'm going to let Michael talk about the last release that happened since the last meeting.
Yeah, hi. So we had one release since the last meeting, 0.20.4, and I'll just briefly give you the highlights. In the Airflow integration, we added a new extractor for the GCS to GCS operator in Airflow. And in the Flink integration, we added support for version 1.16.0. And now the integration resolves topic names from topic patterns. And then in the proxy, which is an exciting ongoing new feature, we implemented logic for validating and handling lineage events. We don't always talk about CI work, but there's a lot of it that goes on behind the scenes. And in this last month, we replaced a bunch of individually configured linners and formatters with the rough package. So thanks to all the contributors. There were many bug fixes as always, and I wanted to give a shout out to a new contributor, Varun, for a bug fix in the Spark integration. And for more information, you can follow those links. So.
Thank you. Excuse me 1 second. I'll be back in 1 second. Feel free to, you know.
Michael, I think this is where you tell us a joke or something.
Yeah, have you heard the one about the guy who doesn't have a joke ready? The awkward pause.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Can you talk a little bit about proxy, since you said it's not something we talk about a lot? What would one use a proxy for?
I would love to pitch that or toss that to Minkyu, because I think he's the driving force behind the proxy.
Yeah, so the proxy, in the OpenLineage repo, we actually have 2 proxies now. One is the backend proxy was there quite a bit. That backend proxy was for kind of reverse proxy, providing the Kafka transport layer to the OpenLineage, because OpenLineage only provided OpenLineage spec only defines the HTTP API. But another proxy that I'm working on is the client-side proxy. So basically, all the OpenLineage integration sends the lineage event to some configured backend. But sometimes there could be some issue in backend, and there could be some network delay and that kind of thing. So this client proxy is just it is intended to be in a same network or same machine with the integration, like whatever however you configure, and then kind of it just play like the configured backend, but from the client side, it receives the OpenLineage event and buffer them and send it to configured backend. So like it provides a low latency to the integration client. And in case of like the backend outage, it buffers the data until the actual configured backend is up. And so it's not a kind of ultimate solution for that, but kind of just putting some middle ground solution.
Yeah, a stopgap queue almost, as opposed to a full queuing solution. I love it. I'm glad I asked.
Cool, thank you.
It's definitely an operational component, right? To make sure you have good reliability of delivery of events. Sorry for my disappearance for a second. So on that, if there are no more questions on the release, I'll talk a bit about the OpenLineage in Airflow AIP that I submitted. So a couple of weeks ago, I sent, so we had been working on this proposal for having OpenLineage in Airflow. And I sent a couple of weeks ago an email on the Apache Airflow mailing list to get feedback, and we've been having good feedback on this. And I'll go over the rationale and why we want to move the Airflow OpenLineage integration in Airflow and not in the OpenLineage project. So this is here in this document, and so that's the same document I shared on the mailing list. And so one of the key goal is OpenLineage, just like OpenLead telemetry, is meant to be a spec, right? It's not meant to understand all the internal of each project. It's meant to have a central definition of lineage that everybody can depend on and implement. So really the goal is each project should implement the OpenLineage spec and maintain their own integration and their own perspective on what lineage is, and that stays in sync. So of course, to bootstrap this ecosystem, OpenLineage does have integration with open source projects so that we can get more coverage while the spec is being more adopted. But the goal is really to move all those integration in each of the projects. And so in particular, in the case of Airflow, it has happened a couple of times that the OpenLineage integration gets broken because something changes in Airflow, and then the OpenLineage project gets to catch up and fix the change so that the lineage still gets extracted. So it creates like incompatibilities between certain version of OpenLineage Airflow and Airflow itself. So the idea of that is move the logic into the Airflow project so that it's tested with Airflow, and so that whenever someone submits a new operator or modifies an operator, they also fix the lineage logic or adjust it. And so that's kind of one of the key goal is to have it built in and first class support in Airflow. It makes it easier to use for the users of Airflow, and it makes it much more stable and much more reliable over time, right? And it's less maintenance efforts. And it's something, and it's really something the Airflow community also considers core to Airflow to expose lineage. So there's also a bit of, rationale, like in showing the current coverage of OpenLineage. So I put here like things that have been publicly communicated about. So if you feel like you're supporting OpenLineage, but it's not there yet, so just feel free to write a blog post on the OpenLineage blog, and we're happy to talk about it, and just restricting myself here to things like people already have talked publicly about, and things that are not public yet I'm not mentioned. So you see it here, and so the change we're proposing to make here is mainly twofold. So one is to take the OpenLineage Airflow package and turn it into an Airflow OpenLineage provider, and add that as a package in the Airflow project. And second, we have this notion of extractors in the Airflow integration, which is for each operator, you have the corresponding extractor that knows how to look at the internals of the operator and extract lineage. And so basically it's logic that depends on the internal of each operator. But if you put them in the same code base, then you can just move the logic to the operators themselves. And we have documentation in the great documentation website that Ross and team have been driving. Thank you all. And that explains how you can put lineage directly in operator through the the new
default extractor.
Without extractor, using a get open lineage facet on start, get open lineage facet on complete, which is an implementation where you put that logic directly in the operator. And Benji added a great example of this here that I'm linking, which is it's linked later into the, and sorry, your faces are in front of some of the UI. Here. So here's an example of how to do this. So for example, in the DF to GCS operator, you can, so you have your regular execute, and then you can implement get open lineage facet on start, and you expose things like what dataset am I reading from, what is the schema of that dataset I'm reading from, what's the output dataset, right? And similarly, you can add some information in there. And depending on what information you have, you can also add like metadata about how many rows you wrote to that dataset, or other column level lineage if it's available. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Can you still hear me? So
yes.
Yep.
So this is the usual, my phone is connected to my headset and it's rang, and so you can't hear it, but it rang in my head. Sorry about that. And so this is how you collect metadata. And so those are the two main things, right? One, moving the package as a provider in Airflow. And the second is moving the logic with each operator, which will make sure everything is be maintained with the operator and ensuring the stability of that code. So there's an illustration here of what that looks like. So this is the current picture. So today we have core Airflow. We have the core OpenLineage with the client and the query parser. We have the OpenLineage Airflow package, which has the DAG listener and the task listener that knows to send event when the DAG starts and ends and when the task starts and ends. And they use extractor, which is a specialized logic for each operator. You have the corresponding extractor that knows how to extract lineage from it. So the end goal is, and I'm color coding here blue, being the OpenLineage package, and gray, the Airflow packages. And so after this, we still have the OpenLineage core packages with the client and the query parser. So this stays in OpenLineage. Core Airflow stays the same with this notion of listeners that have been contributing by the OpenLineage community, by the way. Thank you, Mache and Jakub, who's been in particular contributing to Airflow. And the Airflow OpenLineage providers as the OpenLineage listeners, right, that know how to send events. And now in each provider, the lineage extraction logic moved from separate extractors, and this is brittle, right? Because those depends on the internal of the operator. So every time an operator changes internally, that might break. Now, which moves this logic to the operator thanks to this new API, and it's maintained with this. The unit test for this is with the unit test for the operator, and we don't need extractors anymore. And things are simpler, easier to maintain, more stable over time. And it just benefits the community in general. So this is basically the explanation of what I just said, of what the problem it solves. This is an example of the Marquez UI so that people get a picture of what you get from OpenLineage if you're not familiar with it. And I list, so this is a template for an AIP. So you say, hey, why is this needed, which I just went through. What are the downsides? So the downside is, of course, the Airflow community gets to maintain that code. But I mean, in our opinion, there's also, it's the point, right? Like those things don't become brittle and it's best for the users. And of course, the maintainer of that code are going to maintain it. They just contribute more to Airflow, which they've been doing anyway. And then we expect the authors of operators moving forward to respect this contract and to make lineage built in new operators. So that's kind of, so depending if you consider if it's a downside, but it's definitely more work in the Airflow community, but potentially the Airflow community gets bigger as well in the process. So who's affected? If you're not using OpenLineage, you're not affected. If you're using it, there will be a package change. So we need to, manage this. There's a new package, probably we need some redirection for a bit. And then we go in the implementation details, like, so there's 3 steps, like moving the provider in Airflow. And so some of the details, how you manage that transition, moving the extractor logic to each of the providers. And I think this can happen independently. And the last one is a proposal to add lineage support for things that are opaque currently, like Python operator, which is arbitrary Python code, or the TaskFlow API, which is also a better way to write Python code, Python operators in Airflow. And so which typically those are arbitrary Python code, so it's a bit opaque, but we're writing here a proposal to get lineage when people use hooks, right? So in Airflow, you have this notion of hook when you can execute SQL through the connection manager in Airflow. So you may have a registered connection and use hooks to use them to access database and execute queries. So we can see all the queries going through those hooks. And so we can use that as a way to instrument lineage in Python code, assuming people use SQL. So that's one step of what we're proposing. And so that's it. So, this was the draft that we made for getting feedback. And you see that some feedback, some comments have been closed. There have been some discussion. There's a mailing links thread with people giving some feedback. And I've started copying the content of this. The next step is to have a vote on the Airflow meeting list. So that's where, I moved the content of this Google Doc into the Apache Airflow wiki and created this document. And the next step is to start a vote on the Airflow mailing list. Any question about this?
I wanted to add one thing, is that me and Jakub, who are like primarily contributors to OpenLineage Airflow right now, we would like to, of course, assist with this process. Like when you talked about downsides to Airflow community, so we will be there to like help and add support and maintain all the machinery needed to have OpenLineage in Airflow. So it's not like throwing code over the wall and making Airflow maintain it.
Yeah, I fully agree, right? So I expect that the same amount of effort to maintain this would still be put in by the same people. And, I would assume that eventually those contributors to this package will end up becoming committers in Airflow. Because typically that's how it happens, right? Like you contribute consistently to the code base and you become a committer. Of course, it's up to the Airflow PMC to decide that. So I can't say in the document, oh, and of course they become committers, because it's up to the Airflow PMC. But I'm fully expecting that this is what is going to happen, naturally as you keep contributing to that code base. Okay, so that's
I have a
it.
quick question
Oh,
for
go ahead.
you. Sorry. Just quickly, like if you were to write an operator, like a full provider today, would you again like start from outside of the Airflow package, or like would you go directly to the Airflow repo instead?
So I think if you're starting, my personal perspective, and I think so. Yeah, I mentioned on Slack. I think you should ask this question to Airflow as well, right? I think that would be a good forum, the Airflow dev mailing list, to ask this question. My personal perspective on that is you probably want to start externally and iterate on what you want to do. And you know, you can also submit this as a provider once you get to something you like, because I think you'd be able to iterate faster on your own, especially if you're the main person working on it. I'm not sure. I think there's been maybe Ross, you can speak about this, like on the mailing list. I think there's on Airflow, there's the thinking of preferring people to maintain their providers in their own repo, except instead of having all the providers in the Airflow project. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think there's been a movement towards that. The thinking behind it being that, the third-party tool provider is going to be in a much better situation to keep it up to date with changing APIs and things like that. Sort of distributing that, I think is the current intention there.
Right. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome. Is there any more questions on this, the Airflow thing? So I'll get to the next step. And so following up on the discussion, and I think, Sherry, you had the document that we kept note on last time. And I believe, Ross, you had opened a few tickets related to that, of where we were at the moment.
I did, yes. Sherry, of course, I want to sort of, it's your discussion to lead, I believe, but just to update you, I did open 2 tickets. I opened one ticket in the docs repo that was essentially about there being missing documentation about what constitutes an OpenLineage implementation, and so I figured it'd be good to have a document there that just says, here are the essential parts of the spec to implement. And then we can use that document as a thing we can draft together and flesh out a lot of things. And I also did submitted an issue in the OpenLineage repository about missing a validation suite, and thought it would be really cool if we could have a simple validation suite, something that an OpenLineage consumer can run to make sure that they're able to properly consume all the various OpenLineage messages that might be generated, and then a validation suite for producers to make sure that they're producing stuff that a typical OpenLineage backend can consume. And so I had a couple of ideas about how we might go about each of those, starting with the metadata in Marquez's Docker directory. The seed data there might be a really good place to start building a validation suite for OpenLineage producers, or sorry, no, consumers. I'm getting that backwards, for consumers. And then on the other way around, figuring out how to take Marquez and like maybe run it in a way that it can be a validation suite itself. Maybe it doesn't even need a database, maybe it doesn't need a front end, but it needs to be extra persnickety about the events that it consumes. And so I was thinking there could be something we could pull out of the Marquez project that can help us validate OpenLineage messages. So I had some really kind of early ideas on that I wanted to share.
Great. I don't have much to add. Ross's work has been the bulk of what has been done. I love that idea of using what already exists, whether it's open source or not. If people have things they can contribute, using Marquez as kind of like an engine to test compatibility at the very least for now. And obviously it's, we can't really test compatibility until we know what that means. So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem, but I think also we can at least have a start to say, are you compatible with Marquez? Here's a Marquez engine, right? And then, build on that, add and remove as we figure it out. And other than that work, I know that there were missing guides put into a ticket. I think Mandy did that, or Maciej did that. Somebody with an M. So yeah, I don't really have much more to add to the discussion, except if people have their own things that they want to bring to what they think, like, what do you all think should be part of the spec? All right, I have my opinion. When I gave the example in previous sessions, I gave the example of minimum for me personally would be the nodes that are related to each other, whether they're tables or columns, right? That kind of object level, and the lines between them, and then preferably the transformations. That's like the minimal set probably would be without transformations, but I'd strongly prefer with transformations. But I definitely want to open it up and hear from people like, do you think runtime is critical? Like, and what I mean by runtime is I kind of meant when it starts and when it finishes, but also the duration could be critical, right? So what, you know, I do want to open it up to that, and also note that we're going to be doing some kind of brainstorming in the March meeting in Providence too. So those who will be there, we'll do it there, but those who will not be there, we also want your input. And so with that, I'm happy to have people shout out like what they think is important for maybe 5 minutes. We'll time box it.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, I guess from our perspective, right? You know, so like we're here at Fivetran thinking about how we're going to use OpenLineage, and you know, I mean, I think it might be cool. You know, obviously in like our core spec, like the OpenLineage GitHub repository, you know, we probably want to be more thoughtful about the type of things we might support in that spec, right? Like trying to make clean abstractions that allow us to represent, you know, data and metadata and things like that in a way that everyone in the community we kind of view as like a best practice, right? You know, but obviously also in the spec, there's this concept of like extensibility. So, you know, maybe just accepting that like you might have your own GitHub repository that has your own, you know, we might have our own custom like Fivetran OpenLineage extension that'll be referenced from the metadata that we are, you know, serializing. And hey, if you want to deal with this object, this nested object in our payload, maybe you have to hit our, you know, go to our internal repository and get it. Just for the sake of, you know, I don't necessarily think that everyone in the community knows or cares or wants to be involved with looking at the objects in the way that we are, right?
Sure, and that's part of the dilemma that we have. Like, let's say Fivetran says, hey, we're OpenLineage compliant. Like, first of all, what does that mean, right? That's like saying I speak Spanish because I know 3 words in Spanish. Like, technically it's true, but can I communicate with somebody else in Spain, in Mexico, in Colombia, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here. So what are the different dialects, right? And having a test suite would help us figure out even what those dialects are. Maybe those dialects are like design versus operational, and maybe it's more like debugging kind of aspects versus other things. So 100% agree with you. And part of it is, instead of just saying it's extensible, we've got 5 things, 10 things that are required and everything else is flexible, go, right? To have a tool so that the ecosystem can grow, so that we could say, hey, Fivetran is compatible with Marquez, and it's compatible, you know, and Airflow is not compatible on these things.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I didn't want to quite interrupt you, but I would love to hear like, what does Fivetran think of as critical, right? And then we could say like, okay, that's in the category of this and that. And then people will know, does my application work with Fivetran? Like, does it just break, or does it work, but there are some null things and that's fine?
Yeah, you know, I mean, just for our, you know, our business use case, I mean, the way that we've been thinking about it is obviously, you know, kind of like the core OpenLineage objects, like, you know, a sync, data sources, data sets rather, all of the core spec we're planning to implement, right? And then we've kind of thought, right now we're sort of at the phase of thinking through these different, how are we going to use the different facets, right? And how are we going to kind of make use of the ones that are the standard ones? Obviously, like, hey, if we need a custom one, I think we're sort of iterating on like what that would look like, but obviously trying to reuse the standard ones as much as possible. And, at least from my perspective, I've been viewing that as like, that is spec compliant, right? Like anything that comes from like the core OpenLineage repository, like we've all agreed this is a valid object, right? Valid representation. And then, at a certain point, if we have to come up with our own custom things, maybe we have like a versioning of the spec, right? So we could say like, hey, OpenLineage, 1.0, these are the supported payloads. This is what the object should look like. And then as we go on, it could be an iterative community process where, maybe we start building things for our usage. And then we, it's useful. We all agree that over our deliberations, we want to make things part of the general spec. And then it can be rolled out and later. I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but
no, that's exactly it. And the whole point is like, we're at this point now where we have this spec. And so now how does Fivetran extend and deviate from the spec? Much like, Oracle extends and deviates from, I don't know, pick any one of the SQL specs, right? And so we're at that inflection point of like, yeah, like what are the things that are required? For example, I work for Calibra, which is a third-party tool. So we don't often have the GitHub URLs of the original code. We might have the original code, but we don't have the GitHub URLs. That's not provided to us when we go to, Oracle and get the code. So for us, that's like not required at all. And that's something that we can put on the sheet, right? Of like, here's the things that are like critical to us. And here's the things that like, we don't care. And then that would like, that would pass or fail certain tests, which is fine because it's not like, oh, you failed. It's just, oh yeah, we don't deal with the URL. And so if there's an application whose functionality is critically based on the URL, then we wouldn't be compatible with that.
Real quick, I think we're talking about kind of the extensibility compatibility thing. And this is something I've been thinking about as well. And I feel like there's kind of like a couple components to this. You have this component of like, I've received an event. Is that event valid? Is it compliant with the things that are defined in the spec? Like, then that's something that we can just test. Like, are you emitting valid events? And then there's the, if you've added facets or you have facets, does OpenLineage know what to do with those facets? And more importantly, do the things later or later down in the lineage chain know what to do with those facets? If like one thing is handling column level lineage, and then like the next thing doesn't implement the column level lineage facets, like that's an integration issue because you're losing information there. And the last piece is, and I think a big piece that's like still super manual, is the naming conventions. How do you know you're pointing at the same data set? Right now, that naming thing is just a giant list. And I was looking at Fivetran, and I was like, so there's something I've been doing recently, looking at Fivetran, looking at the work Benji's done, and looking at all the different integrations you guys have. And I'm like, all right, how do we generalize out so that if somebody wants to integrate with 50 different things, you don't have to manually look up 50 different static naming conventions for uniqueness? So those are kind of the things that I've been thinking about. Not sure if that's helpful.
I wanted to add that we've been experimenting with something like provider defined facets. I don't know how to call that, but for Airflow, for example, we have things like DAG ID or Airflow something version, and those will be ever specific to Airflow, but they might be important for some consumer that understands that this is an Airflow task and wants to do something special with it. So it's not like every custom facet is bad, and it's not like every custom facet should be somehow fit into standard facets, but rather we shouldn't duplicate the information that could be expressed by what we already have. Or maybe we could add something to the current facets, right? They are also extendable in a way that you can add fields.
Great.
So definitely the intent of custom facets, and I was saying something along those lines in the chat, is to enable this, right? So if something's missing in the core facet or is not specific enough to what your domain is and what you're doing, it's really here to unblock you, and you can define either things that are specific to you and you define them in their namespace in your repo and you have your own schemas and you define your own things. It's also opens the door to promote those things are becoming like core facets. Like maybe there's a more generic version of it that should be added to the core facets. And so that's a way, you know, to not be blocked. Like anybody can start experimenting or defining precisely what their domain is and being part of the spec. It's a way also to promote new concept that might be missing and that we can collaborate together in this kind of setting or on the document, you know, through Slack to improve. And those things can cohabitate as well. I think if we want to avoid too much duplication of metadata, you can have some, right? Because we have I think we have like generic representation of a logical plan, but that might not be specific enough for certain use cases, right? So you might have the same information twice, one in the generic representation that everybody understands, and maybe there's like a specific representation that's, you know, vendor specific, and it's a custom facet, and it's fine, right? Like you can have this kind of information there. So I think it's a good way. It's a bit like managing chaos, so it's a trade-off between having everything centralized and everything needs to be approved before you do anything, and full chaos or everybody define their own thing. But you have a good trade-off of being able to not be blocked on like kind of getting to a consensus on everyone. But at the same time, we have a mechanism to promote those things and improve the spec and have a more common vocabulary for things.
Right. So for example, I believe something that's not in the spec, correct me if I'm wrong, is an error message, right? The status is in the spec, but not like an error message. Is that correct? Right. And so,
yeah.
Or is it?
I think we have a error facet now, but
okay.
But you could, but anyway, like let's assume it's not there, and that this is a fair example.
Right. And then, but like if Fivetran came up with that as a custom facet, the naming includes the name of the company, right? So the naming of the custom facet, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, right? But it's like custom Fivetran error message something. I think there's a category in there too, right? And so I think that's an interesting thing of how do you promote it from when you realize like, hey, this should be a core facet, right? Then Fivetran would have to go and change all their instances of Fivetran error message to just error message. So that is interesting. Would people be willing to just write down the list of their custom facets somewhere?
I think you're right. We need to get this right. So there's a thing like currently we have a certain number of facets, and you can find them in the spec. And I think different integration implement a different subset of them. And we don't have yet. We talked about this matrix of capturing all of that, right? And that could include custom facet. I think that applies to the core integration, and that applies to custom things as well. And having a place where you find all of those things that have been defined and who provide them, who produces them, who consumes them, I think would be a good exercise. So I don't know, maybe there's a shared Google Doc we work from, or there's a PR, or we put it in Markdown in the repo. I think it would be a good exercise to maintain that. It's very useful.
I'd like to add interesting perspective, hopefully interesting, with regard to custom facets, just the kind of point of order of the fact that the universe of valuable custom assets, I don't think it's totally known at this point. It's there's a lot of opportunity to discover the structure of custom facets that can really drive powerful use cases. And my sense is a story of the journey of discovery is just kind of getting started, and the more adoption that this community sees, the more opportunities to kind of discover those. So I totally understand the need to pin down the spec, be clear.
Oh, no, but we're not pinning it down. The whole point is we realize it's been pinned down, and that's exactly where we are, is that we're like, hey, we realize that maybe this needs to be expanded a little more. And I think this is a like nobody wants to go first kind of a thing, right? Nobody wants to say, oh, I have the custom facet of error message, and I have the custom facet of last runtime or something like that, right? I have a custom last runtime is not a great custom facet because you can just look it up.
I take your point, and to clarify, I don't see the spec being pinned down. I see this as a conversation of bringing visibility and clarity to any provider, your delta of the defined spec. And I think that setting up the incentive structure for folks to discover new custom facets that can be valuable, setting up a way for people in the community to know how they can be good stewards of those custom facets and bring them on a journey to becoming part of the formal spec. Just setting up the incentive structures, I think will lead to good things. And again, I'm coming from this perspective of how do we bring joy to the data teams of the world. And the stories that I hear are so diverse in terms of what they want to do with OpenLineage, in terms of the use cases they want to unlock. So I've had a lot of conversations and I'm still learning. Every conversation, it's something new I haven't thought of. So really kind of controlling that innovation, but promoting it at the same time, I think is a good thing. Thanks for that.
And there is a mechanism to discover those custom facets, right? So when you create a custom facet, you have to publish your schema, right, on the URL somewhere, right? So it could be in your GitHub repo somewhere. And then each facet that is being published will have a pointer to that URL, to this schema that defines it. So as a consumer of OpenLineage, you can get all the lists, all the custom facets that are being sent, right? And as a consumer, you can discover all the unique custom facets and where the schema is and who maintained them. So it's kind of like the intent of the spec, right? It has this mechanism. So there's a bit of a decentralized ability to define custom facet. They don't have to be in the OpenLineage repo, and there's zero need for asking for discovery of those. But I think we could probably define like a registration process, right? You can register your prefix, and like you can say, hey, we claim, Fivetran as a prefix, and we're the only ones who can use it. And this is a pointer to our repo of custom facets, right? So we could have a more static discovery as well. I think like right now, the discovery is a bit at runtime, right? You can see if you consume OpenLineage, you can see the facet and discover them. But I think we could have a registration process where you say, hey, we claim this prefix and we're recorded on the OpenLineage repo. And this is where we put our facets, and makes it easier to kind of collect all of those things.
Well, somebody marked down February 9th, 2023 as how long it takes for a governance tool to become governance. Because we're talking now about, right, governance in custom facets. So it's great. I think my meta governance, I think my 5 minutes are long up. But yeah, I definitely think that we should be able to have people share their, if they want, share their custom facets somewhere. It doesn't have to be like registration, it's great, but even for now, just kind of like, how have you extended it? Or how would you like to see it extended? Even if you haven't, if you have grand ideas, like, let's hear them.
So I'd like to remind everyone that we created a Slack channel for this discussion on the OpenLineage Slack. It's spec-compliance. And so this document can be found there. And so I encourage you to follow up on there. And you're right, Sherry, thank you. I should be doing better time management on this. So I'll follow up to the next item. And sorry, Michael, if it's you have like 3 minutes left.
No problem. I'm also happy to just do this another time.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit, rather than rushing it, you're right? We should just like put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so for everyone, if you're curious in the meantime, Michael wrote a blog post about what's in the namespace. So I would encourage you to go look at it if you're curious, and then we'll, just sneak peek, and we'll talk about this next time.
I think the big question in my mind about this what's in a namespace blog post is, have we successfully demystified this? And if not, what is still mysterious about this? And I guess my answer is there's still plenty of mystery around namespaces. And so that was kind of the conversation that I was expecting here. But yeah, to place it in your mind, like what can we do to further solidify this and explain it and communicate it? Sorry, Julian, didn't mean to jump in there.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Please jump in. My goal in this meeting is to speak as little as possible. I don't know if I succeed, you know. Okay. Well, we are at time. Thank you all. So of course, you know, I think the benefits of synchronous meetings like this is we can, you know, have quick interaction and share ideas and all that. But, you know, the nature of distributed communities, I think we should follow up on Slack and also use asynchronous mechanism to communicate. To Sherry's point, I think everybody here has access, you know, to that doc. She was Sherry's taking notes in. And I think our ask is, please, can you kind of write down some of the thoughts you were sharing on how you use OpenLineage, what you consume or not. And so please follow up there. And we will follow up on Slack in between the meetings. You don't have to wait a month to talk more about this. Last thoughts? Any last comments? Thank you all. See you at the next meeting and see you on Slack in between.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good meeting, everybody.
Bye.
Nice to see you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, good to see you all.